Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Lovely day here in Venice. The EU transport industry directly employs more than 10 million people and accounts for 4.5% of total employment and represents 4.6% of GDP. I just start with that to put European transport industry in some kind of perspective as to how important it is to the European economy. The Trans-European Transport Network policy, commonly known as TEN-T, is Europe's transport infrastructure policy. Through the TEN-T policy, the EU aims at achieving an efficient transport network and complete the EU internal market by creating the missing links and removing bottlenecks. It also looks to shape mobility by reducing congestion, offering alternative routes on a more sustainable basis to operators and passengers. But what is the maritime component of the TEN-T policy? TEN-T includes a maritime component, that's true, which is fully being addressed under the concept of the Motorways of the Sea. Now, while we were a little late joining the club of that concept, nevertheless we've now joined and we are beginning to see the fruits of our labours. It's a very important component because thanks to maritime transport we assure that 40% of EU internal trade and 75% of external trade is delivered. It is estimated that in 2014, the EU ports handled 3.8 billion tonnes of cargo and around 3 billion tonnes of interland traffic. Now let me underline the growth aspect of that. European ports are directly linked to over 800,000 enterprises, generating in total the direct and indirect employment of 3 million people. Now we're here today in the Port of Venice, and the Port of Venice contributes significantly to all those statistics. Strategically located, as Paulo said, at the intersection of the main European transport corridors, they being ScanMed, Mediterranean Sea Corridor and the Adriatic Baltic, and the Motorways of the Seas. It acts as a gateway for trade flows to and from Asia and the passage to Northern Europe, with a leadership in many traffic segments. It's one of the main ports in the Adriatic for container handling, first cruise, home port in the Mediterranean, a port as well as connecting, and Paulo mentioned this briefly in his presentation, to the River Po and the barges on the River Po. Now this conference is about a link between the maritime transport and the environment. I do not need to mention in this area how precious this has to be and how precious the Port of Venice has to operate in that environment. The respect for environment is at the forefront of developing your strategies. This is equally important at EU level. Improving the environmental record of maritime transport is among the prime aims of the European Commission. The long-term objective is to achieve zero waste, zero emissions maritime transport. All these can be achieved of effective policy measures. Legislative initiative, for example, SECA, and policy actions supported with contributions from the EU budget. I would like to focus, if I may, for a moment on the second point, that is the focus on the budget, the EU budget. I was entrusted with the role of the European Coordinator for Motorways of the Sea, and in that role I recently presented to the European Parliament my broad work programme, a so-called detailed implementation plan, in which I concentrated on three priorities. The environment was one, the integration of maritime transport in the logistics chain, two, and maritime safety, traffic management, human element and training was the third. Following my presentation in the European Parliament, I initiated a process of further consultations both with Member States and industry stakeholders, and that's important, getting everybody involved, and it shall lead over time to a more precise document that would reflect expectations of the Motorways of the Sea players and would be supported by adequate funds. This conference is about green ports, green shipping, and therefore I would particularly like to underline the importance of my first development pillar, namely the environment. The idea is that MOS can help the industry to comply with applicable EU and IMO legislations, and MOS should favour projects related to the following. Firstly, there's air quality. Help the industry to comply with air quality, emissions and SECA arrangements. Support further development of LNG and methanol use, as well as to explore other technological options if any. Continue to look into ways of lowering LNG storage and logistic costs, and to continue research on fuel efficiency and use of fossil fuel in order to reduce the CO2 footprint. Then there's the operational pollution. Further develop and pilot on-board treatment systems like ballast water, for example. Then there's accidental pollution. Support measures aimed at improving safety, education, training practices are still necessary in order to improve global safety levels and to avoid accidental pollution. I can see from preliminary comments of Member States to my work that expectations are high. My intention is to make the MOS policy more specific nevertheless, which cannot be forgotten, and that will be more specific in environment. Any next MOS policy document shall be put in an overall context of future budgetary discussions. MOS has to be backed up with significant money in order to help the industry to comply with applicable regulation and encourage the industry to innovate and develop solutions that make the whole sector greener, cleaner and more effective. The next 12 months of the consultation process should allow me to limit the number of the development actions. Therefore, MOS will be better focused and specific to the extent possible. I will engage in a close dialogue with industry stakeholders, European Parliament and Member States to further fine-tune the most important actions that should be financed from the MOS budget. Which then brings me on to how do we spend MOS CEF money. So far, TEN-T and CEF invested in MOS policy altogether is €651 million euros. That comes from the EU budget. If I focus solely on the last 2 years' editions of the Connecting Europe facility, the European Commission distributed in forms of grants 348 million, which contributed to 42 European projects in total and triggered EU-wide investment of 955 million euros. Most of the money was spent on projects related to environment, for instance, investment in LNG propulsion, infrastructure, exhaust gas cleaning systems to comply with SECA, and pilot testing of electric vehicles and installations of onshore supply systems. In terms of numbers, CEF money financed 28 projects with 226 million of EU contribution, which brought about 620 million of investment. I'd like to briefly just take the Italian context, if I may, while we're here in Italy. Italy is very much involved in all these discussions and coordinates its EMOS projects. Your strategic location, know-how and history makes you an indispensable partner in the development of a truly European maritime policy and a crucial player in supporting further short sea shipping in Europe. The Port of Venice contributes to the Fresh Food Corridor, a pilot action to establish a new coal logistics chain in the European Mediterranean. Gain for Moss, which spurs engineering studies and a plan for a construction of LNG retrofitted vessels and a number of LNG bunkering stations. In general, Italy is also involved in a number of projects that prepare the entire Mediterranean region for LNG infrastructure and maritime fuel. That's Poseidon Med. 2. In conclusion, from my perspective, it will be crucial to increase Motorways of the Sea CEF budget in the upcoming review of the multi-annual financial framework and make sure that the importance of MOS policy is well reflected both in terms of political priority and the financial envelope allocated to it. This is crucial if we are to develop the full potential of the maritime industry in a successful European economy. But we need your help. We need you to speak to your government and to get them to accept Motorways of the Sea as a major TEN-T corridor. CEF grants remain a vital ingredient to link Motorways of the Sea with the TEN-T network. The detailed implementation plan will provide a good policy steer to ensure adherence and the selection of valuable projects under future calls. The document shall be crucial for the further development of the EU maritime transport. At last, we are giving a serious focus in the TEN-T to our maritime strategy. But I reiterate, I need your support. It is hard work, as you can imagine, going and getting extra finance at this time here in Europe. It is hard work persuading governments that a maritime policy and Motorways of the Seas is the way forward. And that's where